right into it. We have Maamer Gimel Omnam, however, Kol Inyan Hadin, the whole idea of the judgment by Cheshbon, the specific parameters and making sense of things, Hu Rak Mitzad Seder Hishtalshelut. It's only within Hishtalshelut. It's only within the spiritual universe, the system. That's how things work in Hishtalshelut. Everything has to be in a specific and sensible way of calculation. Mitzad Arba Timing, for 4 reasons. Ready for 4 reasons why within Hishtalshelut, when things make sense, they're going to have to be in a specific, limited way that you get what you deserve. Let's just give an example of making money. Hashem wants to bless you with lots of money. In Rosh Hashanah, Hashem said, this year, you're going to make an absolute fortune, Hillel. But how is that going to come into your life? It has to come back in a very settled way. You can't just find gold nuggets lying under your bedroom and suddenly be a billionaire. It has to come in that today you make a little bit more, then you invest it, and tomorrow you make a little bit more. Why is that? 4 reasons. Aleph, number 1, because it's inner. So inner means it affects you in your specific way. So let's say you're a guy, Hillel, who's like a middle-class, regular guy in America. You know, you drive like a Honda. And then one day you just receive tons of money. It's going to be overwhelming. You won't know what to do with it. If it's something that actually affects your life, you have to receive it in a personal way, in a way that you can handle it. Number 2, based on Seder, because of orderliness. Things have to be ordered. It's called Seder Hishtalshelut, the order of Hishtalshelut. It's called an order for a reason. Now, I just want to talk about what would happen if it's not an order, because there's a plane of existence higher than Seder Hishtalshelut is a world of toil, which literally means chaos. Which what happened there? Hashem made it without a Seder. Hashem made that in the world of toil, everything's very intense. Chesed is 100% chesed. Chesed is like, I need to give money to everyone who asks. You know, drug dealers, money. Terrorists, give them money. As opposed to Gvura is like, I'm not giving money to anyone unless they deserve it, you know? Someone goes over to you and is like, listen, I really need to feed my kids. And you're like, excuse me, do you work for me? Like, do I owe you a paycheck? So that can't last. There's no orderliness. Everything's just trying to be 100%. Imagine you worked in a company.
Other door.
Imagine you worked in a company where everyone tried to be 100% in charge. Can you imagine that? Imagine you working for, someone give me a company. Apple. There we go.
What?
So you're working for Apple, and the guy who makes smartphones is like, from now on, we're investing all our resources in new iPhones. And the guy who makes the MacBooks is like, from now on, all resources in MacBooks. You're not going to have a very functional company. So you have to have everything in an orderly fashion. Now, Gimel, reason number 3 why everything has to come in a specific, personalized way. Liyosei arba kli, in order to have the ur in the kli, literally the light in the vessel, energy in the receptacle. You have to be able to receive this in a way that works for you. So let's say you're a guy who you can only handle usually you're used to making $100 a day, and that's what you can handle. If all of a sudden you're making $1 million a day, you go crazy. By the way, a lot of people, when they start making a ton of money very quickly, and not used to it, they become what's called eccentric, which basically means crazy just with a lot of money. And that's because, very good. That's because they don't know, they can't fit the ur in the kli. Suddenly they have so much, and they're not used to handling it, as opposed to if they work their way up slowly, and they get to the same wealth, but now they'd be able to they'd adjust their lifestyle and their outlook. Yeah, someone born into wealth sometimes is in a better situation. Sometimes it just makes them even more crazy. But anyhow. So, number 4. Because things have to come from one level to the next. So the same way Hashem runs the world, that He gives a lot of ur to the higher worlds, then to malachim is a bit less ur, and then to people is a bit less. So things are going down from one level to the next. So the same thing, if you work in a company, which company did you say, Menachem? BJ's? What do BJ's sell? Products? Yeah, I assume so, but like, what type of products?
I don't know. Walmart. Okay. Say Walmart.
Walmart. Beautiful. What does Walmart sell?
Everything.
Walmart sells everything, apparently.
They don't sell food.
They do. They sell a lot of things.
Really?
It's like
they sell good food.
You ever been in Walmart?
You ever heard staff chips?
Never bought
From New York, has no Walmart.
Okay. So let's say
enter the food section in any Walmart or Target.
Fascinating.
Why would
Okay,
I
next
ever
time you go to Walmart, check it out. It's pretty cool. So here's the thing about Walmart. The guy, the CEO of Walmart, how much money do you think he makes a year?
$7.
$7?
This is Amazon.
Okay, that's a pretty good guess.
Amazon's
Does anyone have any other guesses?
Amazon's taking
In the
over
billions?
CEO of Walmart.
taking over his business.
What's the salary of Walmart CEO? Why do so many people look this up? 27.4 million. Oh, okay, that's nice. That's nice. He should be able to pay off his credit card bills like that. So,
How much people
Maybe not with his credit card bills. How much product they buy from China?
so here's the thing. That he's making a lot of money. Now imagine a deputy CEO is probably making a bit less. The next guy a bit less. A bit less. And then a worker, and then before you know it, you have the high school kid who comes a couple of hours after work to pack things in bags, and they're getting minimum wage. So that's because everything is in a one level to the next. Because the guy at the top is making this much money, he can afford to pay the next guy that much money. And it gets whittled down one level to the next. Now imagine if everyone just received $27 million. It'd be pretty cool, but I don't think that there'd be anyone working there anymore. The school, the shop would probably close down. So now we figured out these 4 reasons why in Seder Hishtalshelut everything has to come from one level to the next. So call any energy, whatever it is, whether it's intellectual, or it's intellectual giving off, someone's giving over intellect, like giving a shiur, whether it's the feeling, the effect of emotions, it has, in essence, its nature. Whatever it is. For example, the light, the of the mind, naturally, it's calm, cool, and collected. That's why it's actually referred to as water, because water is cool, calm, still. I had a friend who used to come to our house. Never shliach. He used to come and he used to have tea. And every time he'd read the tea packet, he thought it was hilarious. There's a guy from like Argentina, and he read the back of the tea packet, and there's one company that had in the back serenity and happiness. And he used to make this whole show of reading, like drinking his tea, and it's like, serenity and happiness. So that's like Maamer. It's calm, back. Now, what do you think emotions are like? They're not very calm, are they? But what about of the middle of emotion? Teva naturally it has this ragshus, feeling, this bailus, and excitement. So whatever it is, whether it's anger from Gura, or whether it is excitement or pleasure, they all are fired, awake, energetic, just like a bakar and shiur in the morning. Kain of our pnimi, so too is the our pnimi, the inner arches, it has its teva, its essential nature. So what is the essence of our pnimi, of personalized or? It's that it is calculated and specific. Teva seder hu teva cheshbon. The nature of orderliness is the nature of a calculation. V'adiok and specifics. Both with regards to how much, quality, and quantity. What does that mean? That there's 2 ways. Let's go back to our money example. You want to give someone a lot of money. Let's say you're someone like Avir Chaim. He's the richest man in the world. Yeah. So he's like, you know what? Hillel's such a good friend. I'm going to make him super rich. There's 2 ways to do it. Let's look in, exactly. Let's look in Kamas and Echos. He could either give him a ton of money in one shot, $1 billion, and in Echos, in quality, what type of money is he going to give him? He's going to give it all to him in stock options.
And
So now
monthly bills.
we have a problem over here. Hillel has so much money, he doesn't know what to do with it. And the type of money he has, it's in the stock market, and he doesn't know how to redeem it. He probably can't buy food for his family because he doesn't know what to do with stock options. So therefore, you'd have to come in a specific way. You have to say, okay, Hillel, I'm giving you $1,000 a week. And I'm going to give it to you in cash. That's in quality and quantity, something he's able to take. Then after a year, when Hillel's got himself a bit more set up financially, he's like, you know what, now I'm going to give you $2,000 a week. So, we're going to later have an example of teaching, which is the best example in this regards. And light in the vessels, are there any light in your vessels? Do you have a vase that lights it? Meaning the energy, the way it comes into your landing pad, your receptacle for it. Even when, in general, the receptacle, it's fitting to the light. So let's say Chaim's giving Menachem, who's also rich, a lot of money, and he's used to taking it. He can handle it. Let's say, for example, the mind, the physical mind, the brain, with all the brain cells in there, that, generally speaking, is a proper place for intellect. Yeah, a person's intellect finds expression in his physical brain. In the physical heart, that in general is a place, a resting place, an expression point for the midas, for the emotions. By the way, science hasn't found this yet, that the physical heart is connected to emotions. As far as they're concerned, the physical heart is a pump. One day a study, look out for it. One day, 20 years, a study is going to come out that some part of the heart regulates your emotions. I can't wait. One day it's going to come out.
You should just look at them emotionally, like, anyone that acts too emotionally, they always go, well, my heart says.
I mean, doesn't, the heart symbolize...
Yeah, the heart symbolizes emotions.
Emotions.
But that's just in a poetic way. But the physical heart being the place for the emotions to be revealed...
But why would they, make emotions, from the heart, a symbol from the heart, and not... If it's not based off science.
Why did they make that?
Why just choose the hand as
maybe because they store it in the Torah. So, in the Torah it says Hashem...
It's not emoji. It's heart symbolizing, emotions.
It's probably because it's based in the Torah. It says in the Torah that Hashem spoke to his heart saying. So, what do we have over here? That the heart is a place of the emotion. Now, one physical way we could see this, when someone's very emotional, usually their heart rate either speeds up, or there's certain emotions such as, there's certain emotions like despair, where the heart rate is going to drop.
Or somebody's a panic attack, his heart is really...
Right, that might already be like a mental illness type of thing.
No, so somebody's scared.
Scared and a panic attack, I don't know. I whatever. I'm not an expert in what isn't a panic attack. Definitely if someone's scared,
right, the comments
up. Yeah, exactly.
What was you?
There we go. Thanks, hello.
What did you say?
If you are, yeah. Because are you a doctor, or do you think you should be a doctor? Write in the comments all about this. Usually the people who think they should be doctors are the keyboard warriors. Hey,
There's a little animation.
You ever heard this line, the keyboard warrior? It's people who are just going on every video and writing a full
Essay.
With all this, hooray, behecher. Oh, I forgot to tell you about, so the emotions find expression in the heart. Therefore, it has to be shtia medida. There has to be a limitation in regards to how much intellect, how much intellect is invested in your brain, and also similarly with emotions. If not so, if you don't have a limited amount of intellect or emotion, your actual physical brain or heart is going to be overloaded and get messed up. So let's say, what happens if someone has a sudden shock? People have shocks, and it could cause even possibly a heart attack or a lot of emotional damage, a lot of physical damage from an emotional shock. You know why? Because it's an overload of emotion the heart can't take. Also with intellect. Did you know that the Nevi'im, I want to give this example. Do you know the Nevi'im, the prophets, are called, in the Torah, they're called Meshugoyim? I think it was the prophet, it was Yoina, who came to the camp of, I think it was Yoav, who was a general at the time. There's a story in Sefer Malachim, and he tells him, he calls him into a room, and he's like, hey, I need to speak to you privately in your tent. They go in, and he splashes some oil on his head, and he says, behold, I've appointed you as king over Israel. And then he ran off before he'd be arrested, because he just went up with some random general and appointed him king. If the king finds out, he's going to get hung, treason, appointing someone else king. So then Yoav walks out, probably dripping with oil, and his friends, the other commanders of the army, they're like, so what's this Meshugana tell you? What's this crazy person tell you? Why do they call him Meshugana? Because the prophets, all of them, besides Moshe Rabbeinu, when they would experience prophecy, they would lose control of their physical facilities.
And they would get it.
Now, why would that be? Let's say they would start rolling around the ground, or start shouting, or start frothing in the mouth, or other things. So that's because there's an overload. Imagine if all of a sudden you started to see angels and have godly visions. You'd go nuts because your brain is used to figuring out whether to buy the donut with pink icing or black icing, and all of a sudden you're seeing godly visions. It's a complete overload. Actually, it's surprising they didn't go crazy. It's surprising they got back to normal afterwards. It's very impressive. They must have been very, very strong people intellectually and emotionally. By the way, that's the reason why people can't see things like angels or things like demons. You know, the Gemara in Brachos that talks about Shindala, that talks about demons, it talks about they're all around you. You know, it says in the Gemara, every person has 1,000 demons on their right side and 10,000 on your left side. And look it up, Brachos Daf Vav Amud Aleph. And you know what he says over there? You just can't see it. You can't see them because if you'd see them, you'd go shtickle cuckoo.
Animals can see
You'd
them.
go out of your mind. Yeah, it's such a thing. Animals can see them because their brain, their intellect is so low level that they don't even realize that it's a problem. Anyhow, so what's going on here? You need intellect that fits in your mind. You need emotions that fit in your heart. So I was speaking to someone who said he knew a certain gentleman in Kentucky who was very unhealthy. And he went to the Kentucky Fair, and he was munching away on, they have like fried everything at the Kentucky Fair. And if you ever been to these fairs, they have the most disgusting food.
Chicken?
Not exactly. More like fried cheese, fried Coke, fried ice cream, fried. Like, imagine like the most unhealthy thing you can imagine, and then fry it. So, anyways, he said that this guy had, fried butter. Exactly. There we go. Fried butter.
That's like the most unhealthiest.
Yeah, that's correct. Like, imagine you batter your butter with more butter so you can make a batter. Yeah, so this guy was eating too much of this stuff, and they say that his heart exploded. Right, anyways. I very highly doubt that's exactly what happened, but that's what they told me. Anyways, so basically, you have to make sure that your heart's able to handle what you do with it. So, let's go back to now. What do we see? Oh, like we see, practically, Rahman al-Islam, God forbid, many sick people, people with brain sickness or heart sickness, it comes because they had too much R, not kalim. For example, an emotional shock they couldn't handle. Also, I assume you'd say with psychological sickness, a lot of people might have been overwhelmed by something, and it was like a so-called tipping point. So, getting on to our fourth point. Any R that needs to go down to one level below it, let's say you have the boss of the company who needs to pay the managers, who need to pay the clerks, who need to pay the store, the people, what do they call them? The cashiers. There we go. It has to be, when you're giving down one level to the next, every R has to be exactly enough for the kli on the next level. You ever been to a water park where they have those giant buckets that slowly fill up and then tip over and pour on everyone? Now imagine if the pipe burst and it was just spraying everyone like a fire hose and all the kids were blown away. It will be a very dangerous situation. There has to be exactly the right amount getting into this bucket to pour into the next bucket. If not for this, not only shall kli R, will the kli not be able to receive the R, but also shall R mabed is a kli. The R will destroy the kli. Imagine Hillel has such a nice life with a little 2-bedroom home, and then Chaim suddenly gives him $1 billion. He's going to go nuts. Before you know it, they say a lot of people who win the lottery, they don't know what to do with the money and start acting crazy with the money. Before you know it, they're in debt, worse debt than ever before. Fascinating, no? Like, for example, let's say you have a teacher who's giving his teaching intellect to a student. Imagine that. Imagine a teacher was actually giving over something to students. So, what would happen? Let's say he's giving, but not in a way that's fitting for the student. Not only will the student not receive the intellect he's supposed to get, also his whole mind's going to be messed up. He's going to be confused. So we have something when I started teaching, I thought the main thing was to give over a lot of information. Then I realized that information, anyone can say information. The trick of teaching is not knowing what to say, is knowing what not to say. So let's say you're standing up in front of a class in camp. What grade were you guys counselors of? Or learning teachers or whatever? Fourth grade. Beautiful. So you're standing in front of your fourth grade class. You want to explain to them what's a Chumash. So you make sure to prepare really well. You know the Alter Rebbe says in Chochmah, you're not allowed to teach without preparing. He brings it from a Gemara. It says in Gemara, someone who teaches without preparing is, it says a very harsh thing about them. So you make sure, what? It says, cursed is the ones who do the work of Hashem with scamming. Rumia is like when you're scamming. So you're doing the work of Hashem, you're teaching children Torah, but if you're not prepared properly, you don't know what you're talking about, you're scamming them. So you're not just scamming them, you're scamming Hashem. So you're taking away his children's Torah. So, let's say you stayed up, Menachem's preparing for class. He stays up the whole night, reading every single explanation of the Chumash. And he comes in as the world expert on this pasuk that he's teaching them today. So he sits down with his fourth graders, and he's like, okay, so this pasuk says, Hashem spoke to Moshe saying. Now, the Radak explains, and the Chassidus explains, and Rashi explains, and really on Rashi, the Mizrahi explains and disagrees with how they interpret Rashi. Before you know it, these kids aren't going to know the pasuk, they're not going to know the explanations, they're not going to know nothing. They're going to walk out of class. What do you learn today? Stuff. A lot of things. Worst thing, when your kid comes home from school, you're like, so what do you learn today? A lot of things. Okay, shkoyach. So the shtick is, after you've learned all the commentaries and prepared fully, now distill that information and figure out how can I give this over in the best way that a fourth grader will appreciate it. And then you walk into class and you say the pasuk and you say, there's a very interesting explanation about this, and you give over one of the commentaries in a very nice way for a fourth grader with the explanation and the marshal of toys and candies. So what would happen? Fine. So we see that when you're teaching, if you give over in an orderly fashion in a way that's going to fit into the Makabel's mind, then they're going to come out. Great class. Wow, we learned a lot today. If you're just going to give tons of information, a full-on waterfall, then they're going to walk out with nothing. They're going to walk out more confused than they walked in. You guys ever been a shiur of some Rosh Yeshiva? It's a big problem. You have some Rosh Yeshiva who are incredible Torah geniuses. So therefore, when they walk into shiur, they have a bunch of bachrim. So they just launch right into the deep and lengthy explanations in all parts of the Torah. And are you everyone is sure?
Winner is the exact opposite problem.
Yeah, so he probably wants to negate this problem, and he probably wants to just stick to the basics. Right? You have two types of teachers. One could be like, okay, what does the Gemara say? Everyone understand that? Okay, let's move on to Rashi. Make sure everyone's on the same page. Let's move on to Tosfos. Then you have the next guy who's like, okay, everyone knows Gemara, Rashi, Tosfos, amazing. Now I had this incredible chiddush. I had this great novel thought based on all different parts of the Torah, and just blast into that. So, what's your teacher like? Yeah.
Recently,
Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah? Very nice. Very good to hear. Okay, because if you just explode right there, if you just go dive into the deep end without learning how to swim, all the students, tell me what's better. 2, you have 3 options. What's the best, second best, and worst? 1 is not teaching a kid how to swim. Number 2 is teaching him how to swim in the shallow end and then slowly progressing to the deep end. Number 3 is throwing him into the deep end straight away because, you should learn how to swim extra well right now. Yeah, the worst is probably throwing him into the deep end. It's you should be arrested for that, that's dangerous stuff. I hope there's exactly the same thing. Sometimes you have a teacher who just throws a student. He's like, tell me, you bought a Gemara this semester? He's like, yeah. You like a big Gemara with all the extra commentaries? Okay, go learn. Have fun. You have to go, as teacher, has to take a student on a journey, one step at a time, according to the student's abilities. But Tamadover, the reason for this is any other that comes down from one level to the next, so matem and lower than it, historically is he has to be in accordance with that level. Now, from all these examples, we can understand the Bab Sefirah al Yonis. Hishtalshelut in the higher spheres of Hishtalshelut, Avol. Okay, before we get over to Avol, now we've figured out how Hishtalshelut works. One level to the next, very nicely. Now, I just want to say a story that there was once I don't remember what the name of the Chassid was, and I don't remember what the name of the Rebbe was. Wow, this is a problem for the story. Anyhow, there were 2 Chassidim in town, and one, his name was, I think, Reuven, and they both had the same name. I can't remember. One was like the big Reuven.
Reuben?
Reuven. One was big Reuven, and one was little Reuven. And the reason they're called big and little is actually the opposite of their size. Big Reuven was short, and little Reuven was tall. But big Reuven had a massive business, and little Reuven had a small business. Now, funnily enough, they had the same business. They both sold tea. Now, they import tea leaves from other countries with better climates to Russia. And big Reuven would import containers, and he'd sell in bulk. And little Reuven had his little tea shop that he'd sell to local customers. So one day, news comes to the marketplace. Just heard, did you hear? Little Reuven's entire tea shipment was confiscated by the customs authority. The Tsar's royal customs officers decided very much like tea, and they decided that they're confiscating this. When little Reuven heard the news, he realized he was ruined. His entire life's livelihood, supporting his family, down the drain. This shipment of tea, not only will he not receive it, he borrowed a lot of money to be able to bring it into the country, and now he's going to be in debt. He's going to be crushed. He's going to have to sell his house. He's going to be homeless. His kids won't know what to eat. All these thoughts are taking over his mind to the point he collapses in a faint. People start running over. They call the town doctor. They start shouting, "Oh, wake him up, splash some water in his face." He wakes up. He's like, "Where am I? What happened?" And he remembers, my tea shipment was all taken. My wife, my children, my family, my home. And he collapses in a faint again. They wake him up. Same thing repeats. The doctor says, he's not going to live like this. He's going to die. He can't go through this any longer. They run to their Rebbe. I don't remember who the Rebbe was. And they told him what happened. And he said, tell him it was a mistake. Tell him it was a mistake. It wasn't his tea shipment that was taken. It was actually big Reuven's. Next time he woke up, he's like, where am I? What happened? Someone quickly shouts, it was a mistake. Your shipment's fine. It's big Reuven's shipment that was confiscated. He's like, oh, okay. And he goes home to recover. Big Reuven, meanwhile, heard that the Rebbe said the shipment was confiscated. And he's like, look, I have a big business, Whatever, it's a loss. I'll make money on the next one. Doesn't make a big difference to me. So a few days later, they get news. An official courier comes that big Reuven's tea shipment was confiscated. So everyone comes running to the Rebbe. Rebbe, how do you know? It's a clear miracle. It was not a miracle. I just know that Hashem doesn't give anyone something they can't handle. Clearly, little Reuven couldn't handle this, so I figured out it must be a mistake. So they probably meant big Reuven. Fine. So now we've figured out that you only get what you can handle. Let's look at the opposite side. What happens if you get above Hishtalshelut? What happens if you get above the system? What happens if you win the lottery? From the point of the infinitude, Hashem's infinite are, the way he relates to the world, so the Maamer said Hishtalshelut is above Hishtalshelut. It comes in the way of makif, a surrounding are, a general are that's not personal. That doesn't come into your kelim specifically. It doesn't make a difference if you're fitting for this ar achayis, or if you're not. It doesn't need any kelim. It comes also to a place that's not fitting. Meaning a place that's not a fitting kli for it. The same way it comes to a fitting place. So as opposed to a business contract that you're only going to get $1 billion contract from the government if you have a big business. Let's say you have a construction business. If you have a massive construction business with thousands of workers, the government will pay you $1 billion to build a bridge. Yeah? But what happens if you're just a handyman at home with a couple of tools in your shed? They're not going to give you $1 billion contract. It's going to be crazy. But for winning the lottery company doesn't care whether you're a handyman or a big contractor. It's all the same. This is why good things happen to bad people. This is why also clip and Sitra Achara. But if you're trying to go against Hashem, they're able to receive from market, from a place where good and bad, big and small are all the same. Even though they're not fitting to receive at all. Because they don't need any kelim. Yes, you don't need any save, you don't need any order, you don't need any kli. Hashem just gives in a place of makif, in a place of the infinite, where big and small, good and bad are all the same. He just gives in a completely unorganized way. Just give to everyone who lines up for a handout. Since it's an inner personal art, it's investing in kli. It's limited to the kelim. So like a contract is in accordance with how big your company is. It depends on the Seder, the orderliness, Hishtalshelut, Aval ha'or, but the or shalamaylam is said Hishtalshelut. It's above Hishtalshelut me'ach hashur or makif. Since it's a general R that reaches everything equally, ain't it mukbal? It's not limited. Therefore, from there comes a lot, an incredible amount, an infinite amount of blessings of success. So that's like winning the lottery as opposed to your paycheck. If you work in yeshiva as a mashpia, you know your paycheck's going to be like $1 an hour or something. Maybe if you're really lucky, it'll be $2 an hour. But if you win the lottery, you get $1 billion right there. Top 3 mashpia?
Top tier.
Top tier, yeah. Premier League. Because this is what it says: if you lift yourself up like an eagle, not like an eagle. If you are evil, you lift yourself up like an eagle. It says this in Obadiah, which everyone knows is a Navi who spoke about the rise and fall of Edom and the evil nations. So they lift themselves up like an eagle. Kamoi, like we see in another pasuk, derech hanesher b'shamayim. The way of the eagle is in the heaven. What does the eagle represent? The eagle is the highest flying bird. It flies high above all the other birds and looks down on everyone. Similarly, just like an eagle is HaKlippas and Sitra Achara, the Klippa and the Sitra Achara, all the evil forces, they lift themselves up, the Kabbalah Mechanis HaMakiv Elyon, to receive from Hashem's Makiv, the general R, the R that gives to everyone. So if they were down in the system, if they were in the company, you know what? They'd be the worst employee in the Hashem company, where the goal is to bring Mashiach. All the terrorists and bad guys, they're really bad employees. They're not going to get a paycheck at all. Not going to get a bonus, not going to get a paycheck. They're going to get fired. Therefore, they have to lift themselves up. And they have to go and buy some lottery tickets and get lucky and then receive in an infinite way from Hashem. Because from Makif, Nimshach Bli Din V'cheshbon, it's given without any calculations. So even though they're missing the number one ingredient to receive from Hashem, which is bittul, which is nullifying yourself, which is putting aside your ego. On the contrary, they have the chutzpah to go completely against what Hashem wants. Hashem says keep Shabbos, they're like, you know what? I'm going to rest on Wednesday. Shabbos, I'm going to do more work than ever. It's drawn down from there. Hashpah Rubi Yoser, a lot of hashpah, infinite amount. So what do we have over here? If they'd receive from Hashem in the inner way, they wouldn't be able to exist. So if Hashem wants them to exist, He has to give them from a place where good and bad is all the same. That's the reason. Why the bad guys have such good lives. You guys ever wondered those terrorist leaders taking refuge in Qatar, why they have billions of dollars in the bank and living it up? It's positive evil people. How could Hashem let that happen? Because in order for them to exist, Hashem can't give them in a personal way because they don't deserve anything personally. So He has to give them in a general way where there's just no limit. Bad guys have a lot of money, a lot of honor in this world, as opposed to in the next world, the world of truth, where everyone's going to get what they deserve. And often they rule over the Jews. You know, there's many good Jews in many countries throughout history who have been ruled by evil, corrupt leaders. Behind them, because where do they receive from? From place above Hishtalshelut. If they received from Hashem in a personal way, they wouldn't exist. So if Hashem wants bad to exist, in order for us to have free choice, He has to give it them from the place where, like it says, even darkness is not dark before you. Light and dark is all the same. Tashbal Yisrael, they're giving to the Yidden, who are they Torah mitzvahs? What says Hishtalshelut? Through Torah mitzvahs, it comes to Hishtalshelut. You do good, Hashem gives you goodness. You don't do good, Hashem gives you less goodness. But giving to the bad guys, it's completely above any limitation, any calculation, any sensible of the Seder Hishtalshelut. Kitzer, in short, Misfiras Chochmah l'mata. From Chochmah and down, everything comes in a personalized, calculated way for 4 reasons. Aleph, Ar Pnimi, because it's an inner art, personalized art. Beis, Seder, it has to be organized. Gimel, Mislabish B'Kli, it has to affect you in your own way. Dalet, Mishtalshel Matam Degrosei, it has to come down from one level to the next. L'mayel min Chochmah. But what about it? Bav Chochmah, you get above the system. Hul'mayel Mishtalshel, the Bav Hishtalshel. Ain't above B'Cheshbon. It doesn't come in a calculated way. Mehai Tayam, for this reason, Sitra Achara, B'Bi Atzma, L'Kabel Misham L'Yosef B'Li Diok V'Riboy. For that reason, Sitra Achara receives from there, and it lifts itself up to receive from the infinite, because there it can receive with no intellect, with no making sense. And now we figured out why bad things happen to good people. No, good things happen to bad people. We're going to have to figure out the other part tomorrow.